We begin this hour with the conflict in the Middle East. You got this fragile ceasefire with Iran days away from expiring, and U.S. negotiators heading to Pakistan for another round of peace talks. But the major issue, Iran says it will not be there. They have no plans to attend. This comes after the U.S. opened fire and seized an Iranian-flagged vessel near the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend. For more of all of this, we're joined by our CBS News senior foreign correspondent, Holly Williams. She's tracking everything from our London newsroom. Holly, good morning. What are we hearing about Iran right now about these potential peace talks in Pakistan?
Hey there, Errol and Adriana. Well, Iran's foreign minister said at a press conference today that the United States was, quote, not serious about pursuing a diplomatic solution. And he accused the US of violating the two-week ceasefire that began earlier this month and is due to expire on Wednesday. He said his country does not have plans to attend any talks with the US. Now, as usual, we're hearing a very different story from the Trump administration. President Trump posted on social media yesterday that US negotiators will arrive in Pakistan tonight for talks. Now, since the Iranians say they're not taking part in negotiations, it's unclear exactly what we should make of that. It's pretty confusing. Also in that post, that the president said that Iran should accept the deal being offered by the US because if it doesn't, then, quote, the US is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. So where does this leave things? Well, the clock is ticking on the ceasefire. The US continues to blockade Iranian ports while Iran has reimposed its own blockade of ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And just a reminder about that, Iran's been able to effectively paralyse shipping, crucially including oil shipping, through the Strait of Hormuz in response to a war started by the US and Israel. Now, while the US and Israel were clearly dominant militarily in that conflict, control over the Strait of Hormuz has given Iran a powerful economic card, including in any negotiations, because it normally carries around 20% of the world's oil.
That's right. A good reminder of that. And Holly, you know, the big news this weekend was the U.S. seizure of that Iranian-flagged vessel. How could that impact, you know, what we hope to be peace talks? Because it could either be increasing the leverage the U.S. has, or it could be pushing Iran further away from the negotiating table.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is part of the US blockade of Iran's ports. The US military says it fired on an Iranian-flagged cargo ship headed towards an Iranian port on Sunday. That followed a 6-hour standoff. Then after dark, US Marines descended on ropes from helicopters and boarded and seized that ship. Iran has accused the US of, quote, armed piracy. So, I mean, what's the takeaway here when it comes to the conflict and the ceasefire? Well, I guess to negotiate a deal, you generally need some level of trust. And that seems in very short supply on both sides.
All right, Holly Williams with the latest for us from London. Holly, thank you.
For more on this, let's go to CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion, joining us now from the White House. Nikole, in an interview with the New York Post, President Trump brushed off concerns that Tehran would not come to the negotiating table. What might the United States' strategy be here heading into these talks?
Yeah, well, the president made clear that a delegation is en route with the hope that these talks do continue. Of course, that delegation being led by Vice President J.D. Vance, as well as Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. So the president saying that, you know, we're supposed to have these talks. I would assume at this point nobody's playing games here. However, to your point, when he was asked whether or not these will even take place, given that the Iranians have remained non-committal, he told the New York Post, well, I don't want to get into that with you, and went on to suggest you can imagine it wouldn't be pretty. Now, of course, this comes on the heels of a very strongly worded post over the weekend where basically the president renewed his threat to, you know, blow up Iranian infrastructure, in essence, saying that, you know, we're offering a fair deal here, and I hope that the Iranians take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. He went on to say in all caps, no more Mr. Nice Guy. So, of course, we have seen the president kind of escalate his rhetoric as these negotiations have kind of gone through various starts and stops. But this is critical in terms of the timetable, because we know that this ceasefire that has been in place over the last 2 weeks, as Holly mentioned, is due to expire later this week. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what might happen should these talks not go forward.
And Nikole, I wonder how much the president's threat carries weight. I mean, any threat from any sitting president is always serious, but considering he was able to walk back the previous threat as long as talks were underway, What is the reaction from lawmakers on Capitol Hill? Because this ceasefire expires in days, and now we have this threat of renewed attacks. Do lawmakers want more say and to make sure Congress has more input?
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we have seen Congress try and fail both in the House and Senate to put up these votes around a war powers resolution. In fact, we expect Democrats to try again this week to vote on one. Senate Democrats have made clear they plan to do this basically every week to continue to challenge this ongoing war. But even some Republicans are starting to be a bit wary and maybe eyeing this 60-day mark of the conflict, should it still be going on by the 60th day mark, perhaps as a way to, again, maybe try to move forward with some type of effort demanding congressional action here. So that is something that we continue to watch on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. But there are some Republicans who do support what the president is doing. Lindsey Graham, for instance, over the weekend, encouraging the president to maintain this blockade and to try to gain control of the Strait of Hormuz, whereas you have many Democrats, of course, continuing to express concern the longer this conflict goes on. Take a listen to what the ranking member from the House Armed Services, Adam Smith, said over the weekend.
The president launched us into this war, and now he really doesn't know how to get out of it. And you can see it in his style. His style is always basically to talk big and try to humiliate and belittle his opponents until they give in to him. But sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes your opponent, Iran in this case, says, yeah, we're not going to do this.
Now, other congressional Democrats raised concerns over the weekend, too, about the impact that this conflict is having on gas prices. Of course, we heard from Energy Secretary Chris Wright over the weekend saying that we may not see gas prices fall below the $3 mark until potentially sometime next year. In a separate interview this morning with The Hill, President Trump did say that he thinks his energy secretary is totally wrong on this, and he believes that prices will go down as soon as this conflict ends.
Nikole, Killion, thank you so much.